Have you ever wondered what being present really means? Is this something as simple as paying attention to your surroundings? Or does being present require something much deeper, almost unattainable? The most common activities we perform without thinking, like beating rice, may hold the answer. Does it seem unlikely? This is exactly what happened in an ancient Zen story. Many centuries ago, in a remote mountainous region of China, there existed a monastery known for its rigorous teachings on the path to self-realization. Commanded by a Zen master, the place was a refuge for those seeking to understand themselves and reach the truth. But life there was not easy. Monks dedicated their lives to meditation, work, and study, often facing more questions than answers. One day, a young man arrived at the monastery. His gaze exuded determination and urgency, akin to a burning desire within. Before the master, he was direct. "I want to know the truth. I'm willing to give my all to this." The master observed him in silence for a long moment, as if he were able to see into the deepest layers of his soul. Finally, he replied, "Knowing the truth is a lifelong task. There are no guarantees that you will achieve it. Are you ready for this?" Without hesitation, the young man confirmed. It was then that the master gave an unexpected order. "From today onwards, your only task will be to pound rice for the monks. Blend the rice from morning until night. When you get tired, rest. And when you wake up, start over. Don't think, don't question. Just do it. Don't come back to me until I find you." What seemed like a simple task actually hid a transformative lesson. The young disciple embarked on a journey that would not be characterized by significant revelations or dramatic events, but rather by the power of humble and constant practice. Can the repetition of common work truly lead to truth? This young man embraced the sound of pounding grains as his only guide, while the other monks meditated, studied scriptures, and sought knowledge in complex words. In his quiet hands, he learned something no book could teach. The young disciple was willing to give himself completely to whatever was necessary to reach the truth. But what does it really mean to seek the truth? In the spiritual context, the search for truth is often associated with deep self-knowledge and self-realization, something that cannot be achieved with intellect or the study of texts alone. Many philosophies, particularly Zen Buddhism, emphasize the experiential nature of truth rather than its mere acquisition. This quest not only involves intellectual reflection but also a detachment from external distractions and one's own thoughts. Buddhist teachings assert that the illusion of the self or personal identity obstructs full perception. The Zen master, with his wisdom, knew that the young man needed to go through a process of direct immersion in the present world, without the luxury of deep contemplation or complex words. It was then that the master gave the disciple the apparently simple task: beating rice. The daily, repetitive work was not just a physical task but a meditative practice disguised as simple work. The young man should not think about anything while carrying out the task. He should lose himself in the present moment, without questions or distractions. This, according to the master, would make him detach from the incessant thoughts and anxieties that prevent the perception of true reality. If this story is making you reflect and find value in simple things, take the opportunity to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you help us continue spreading these messages and bringing more meaningful content to your daily life. Zen Buddhism, founded in the 6th century by Bodhidharma in China, proposes precisely this practical approach to meditation. Many traditions suggest isolating yourself in a cave or spending hours in silence, but Zen proposes that you can find true peace and self-realization in any everyday activity, as long as you carry it out with full attention and presence. Beating rice, then, becomes a rite of mindfulness, a form of wordless meditation, where the focus is not on philosophizing about life but on living it fully. As the young man repeated his task day after day, something extraordinary happened. At first, he felt overwhelmed by the flood of thoughts that invaded his mind, doubts, desires, and worries from the past and future. However, over time, these thoughts began to dissipate, not because he was trying to push them away, but because he ignored them with constant, focused practice of his task. The mind, without stimuli to latch onto, gradually became calmer and quieter. This is a fundamental concept in Zen: detachment. Thoughts are like clouds in the sky of the mind. If you don't adhere to them and allow them to engulf you, they will eventually fade. The disciple, immersed in this simple work, began to lose his personal identity. There was no longer a him who was thinking, just the rice being beaten, the sound, the repetitive action. He was, in fact, going beyond himself. This process of disidentification with thoughts and ego is central to the concept of self-realization. Zen teaches that one cannot know the truth with a mind full of thoughts and concepts. The mind needs to empty itself, not by force, but by the continuous and peaceful practice of mindfulness. The young disciple, by pounding rice, was actually beating his own illusion of separation from the present moment, seeking a state of no mind, where there is no longer judgment or continuous thought. This process of self-discovery was a silent journey, with no major revelations or dramatic explosions. There was no sudden enlightenment or a moment of overwhelming ecstasy, but a gentle and gradual withdrawal from the need to think and control everything. The disciple no longer became knowing in the conventional sense, but on the contrary, he began to realize that, in fact, he had never known anything solidly. And this realization that knowledge is illusory and that truth cannot be thought but lived is the core of self-realization in Zen. Throughout his years of beating rice, the young man left behind his desires to become someone special or enlightened. He became one with the moment, lost in the simple yet profound task. And in doing so, he began to see the world with a clarity that was not available in words or books. For him, the search for truth no longer involved achieving something but releasing what was already within, the ability to be completely present. As the years passed, the disciple continued pounding rice, day after day, without complaining or questioning. He gave up on the notion of success or recognition and fully committed himself to the assigned task. This simple act, which seemed insignificant to the other monks, became the pillar of his spiritual transformation. What enabled this change was the deep detachment and humility he developed throughout his journey. The concept of detachment, especially in the context of Zen Buddhism, goes beyond renouncing material possessions or superficial desires. It involves letting go of all expectations, labels, and judgments, not just in relation to the external world, but also in relation to yourself. For the disciple, this meant abandoning the ambition to be seen as someone important in the monastery or as a special seeker of truth. He understood that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone, not even himself. His practice was its own reward. But how can one achieve this level of detachment? In Zen, the key is to let go of control and accept the moment as it is. Instead of fighting his thoughts or trying to shape the outcome of his actions, the disciple simply gave himself over to what he was doing, pounding rice. His mind was no longer occupied with judging whether it was good or bad, useful or useless. He transcended these dualities, finding freedom in the simplicity of his practice. Genuine humility, a quality often misunderstood, is required for this total surrender. Being humble is not thinking less of yourself but thinking less of yourself. In the case of the disciple, he did not seek prominence or recognition. While the other monks debated the scriptures or tried hard to impress the master, he remained silent, invisible but completely present. His humility was so deep that he didn't even see the work he did as inferior or superior to that of others. He simply did it with the same dedication that an artist applies to creating a masterpiece. Zen teaches that true learning happens when we are prepared to empty our minds, akin to an empty cup ready to fill. The rice disciple embodied this by abandoning all preconceived ideas about what enlightenment or spiritual success meant. He had no interest in comparing his progress with that of others, nor in questioning the master's teachings. For him, the act of pounding rice was the path itself, and that was enough. This state of humility and detachment also prepared him to accept his place in the universe without resistance. He didn't need to be the best or have the right answers, he just needed to be. Silence and repetition taught him that a person's worth is whether they can be present in their work without ego or expectations, not their knowledge or status. When the master asked the disciples to share their achievements by writing verses, the rice disciple had no intention of participating. He didn't see his practice as something he could articulate or showcase. However, when others encouraged him to contribute, His response was both natural and unpretentious. He didn't write anything because he didn't know how to write, but he transcribed lines that reflected his profound understanding. The mind is an illusion. There is no mind nor mirror of the mind. Without a mind, where can the dust settle? These seemingly simple words contained the essence of detachment and humility. They showed that the disciple had transcended the need to think, label, or categorize. He understood that the mind, with its incessant thoughts and incessant desires, was just a construct that disappeared when not fed. The true power of detachment and humility is how they free us from the constant pressure to be or do something. The Rice disciple was not concerned with achieving enlightenment or recognition, but, paradoxically, that is exactly what he achieved. He discovered that by letting it all go, he lost nothing. On the contrary, he found the freedom and peace that many spend their lives searching for. These concepts are a reminder that spiritual practice is not about accumulating knowledge or achieving significant accomplishments, but about being completely immersed in the present, with an open heart and mind. In the end, true letting go is not about giving up everything but about realizing that you are already complete, exactly where you are. And humility in this process teaches us that we are just a part of the whole, simple but deeply connected. The disciple's spiritual transformation began with the act of pounding rice, a seemingly trivial or even tiring task. History teaches us that the simplest actions, when performed with total attention and dedication, can become portals to self-realization. In Zen Buddhism, this idea is central. It is not what we do, but how we do it that determines the depth of our experience and our connection to the present moment. If you're enjoying this reflection, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive more content similar to this. Take advantage of this opportunity to download my ebook, Divine Essence, Rediscovering the Inner Self and Spiritual Peace. The link is in the description. In the modern world, we often associate spiritual or personal progress with elaborate practices, special retreats, or intensive studies. However, Zen wisdom reminds us that it is not necessary to go so far to find peace or meaning. If we carry out routine activities with full awareness, like washing the dishes, cleaning the house, or working in the garden, they can transform into spiritual practices. For the disciple, pounding rice became more than a daily job. It was a form of meditation in motion. He did not need to sit silently for hours or recite mantras. His task was sufficient to create the state of total presence that Zen so cherishes. He was able to disconnect from the scattered thoughts that normally occupy his mind through the repetition of the movement, the rhythmic sound of the crushed grains, and the constant attention to the task. He wasn't just pounding rice, he was living fully in that very moment. Zen teaches that simplicity is a powerful virtue. Instead of complicating life with worries, lofty goals, or intellectual theories, he invites us to embrace the present moment with total acceptance. The disciple demonstrated this simplicity through his unwavering commitment to his work. There were no distractions, judgments, or aspirations to do something bigger. Each stroke of the rice was a step on the spiritual path, a way of freeing oneself from the bonds of the mind. Modern mindfulness practices, proven to be effective in reducing stress and enhancing quality of life, deeply resonate with this approach. Scientific studies carried out in recent decades demonstrate that paying full attention to everyday tasks can improve mental health, increase concentration, and promote a sense of purpose. Although Zen Buddhism is centuries old, its lessons remain more relevant than ever in a fast-paced, distraction-filled world. Furthermore, the disciple's practice also highlights an important point. It is not necessary to seek immediate or tangible results. He didn't know if his dedication to his work would lead to some kind of reward or if it would bring him closer to enlightenment. He just did it. This acceptance of uncertainty is an essential aspect of Zen practice, which teaches that the path is more important than the destination. Repetition, often seen as something monotonous, plays a crucial role here. The disciple discovered that by repeating the same task day after day, he began to free himself from the expectations and mental patterns that kept him trapped. Every movement became an opportunity to connect with the present moment, and every moment was a chance to let go of the ego and the desire for something more. Manual work, in its essence, has transformative power. When done mindfully and without resistance, It puts us in a state of flow, where we lose track of time and completely merge with the task. The disciple experienced this fully. As he pounded rice, he set aside his sense of self, his worries, and even the notion of who he was. Work stopped being an obligation and became a spiritual practice. This message is a powerful reminder for all of us. We do not need extraordinary conditions to find meaning or fulfillment. In everything we do, big or small, we must be present. Just as the disciple found enlightenment in the act of pounding rice, we can find peace and clarity in the simplest activities of our lives. Zen teaches us that simplicity does not mean deprivation but freedom. We have the liberty to live completely free from the burden of the past or the fear of the future. Work, when done with intention and presence, stops being a burden and becomes a path that takes us back to what really matters, being here and now. The story of the rice disciple reveals a fundamental theme in Zen Buddhism: the difference between appearance and essence. In the monastery, other monks judged people by their rank, knowledge, or visible practice. To them, the disciple who spent his days pounding rice was insignificant, someone without spiritual depth or wisdom. However, as the Zen master demonstrated, a person's true essence lies not in appearances, but in their connection to truth and the present moment. This contrast is a mirror of the world we live in. Often, we prioritize the visible: status, titles, possessions, or obvious skills, while overlooking the more subtle and internal aspects that truly matter. The other monks ignored the rice disciple, yet he was the only one who grasped the core of the master's teaching. He did not need to prove anything, nor boast of his spiritual progress. His practice was beyond words and external demonstrations. This lesson's central point is that visible standards cannot measure true spiritual growth. While the other monks were concerned with showing off their knowledge or impressing the master, the rice disciple simply followed his task without expectations or desire for recognition. This contrast is a subtle but powerful critique of the human tendency to judge someone's worth based on superficial criteria. At the climax of the story, this becomes evident when the master asks his disciples to write verses to demonstrate their spiritual understanding. The master dismisses the words written by one of the most respected monks, known for his extensive understanding of the scriptures, as crap despite their beauty. What was missing in these lines? Essence. Despite his theoretical knowledge, this disciple had not internalized the truth. His words were merely reflections of what he had read, not what he had experienced. On the other hand, the rice disciple, who was illiterate and had no access to the scriptures, spoke words of profound wisdom. The mind is an illusion. There is no mind nor mirror of the mind. Without a mind, where can the dust settle? These lines did not come from a place of knowledge, but pure experience. In the silence of his daily practice, he had encountered the truth, while the other monks found themselves ensnared by the seeming wisdom. This contrast also teaches us the importance of humility. Many disciples believed their visible status or practice made them superior, but the rice disciple remained invisible, not caring about how others perceived him. He did not seek approval or recognition, and it was exactly this lack of ego that allowed him to achieve something that others could not. Zen Buddhism often describes essence as the middle way, a state beyond extremes, where there is no attachment to what is visible or external. This path invites simplicity and authenticity. The rice disciple embodied this essence in every blow he gave the rice, in every moment of presence he experienced. He had nothing to prove, and that's exactly why he was able to achieve enlightenment. This contrast between appearance and essence also reflects a paradox. Often, those who seem the least significant are the ones with the greatest depth. The story challenges us to rethink our own judgments. Do we focus on the true nature of individuals and circumstances, or do we remain fixated on their outward appearances? Do we prioritize image over true practice? Ultimately, the master acknowledges the true worth of the rice disciple and selects him as his successor, albeit with a cautionary note. He advises him to leave the monastery, knowing that the other monks, who are attached to appearances, might not accept his choice. This reinforces how deeply appearances can distort our view of reality and create unnecessary conflicts. This part of the story is a powerful reminder that the essence, not the appearance, is what really matters. Everyday life invites us to explore beyond the surface, seeking depth in people and situations. When we let go of the illusions created by the mind, we are able to see the world as it truly is, a place where truth is simple yet profoundly transformative. The story of the Rice disciple is more than a lesson in spiritual enlightenment. It is an invitation to reevaluate how we live and perceive the world. She challenges us to look beyond the superficial distractions of modern life, the desire for recognition, the relentless pursuit of results, and the belief that something's value lies only in its appearance. In the end, true power lies in simplicity and being completely present. The Zen master knew that the essence of learning is not in words or external demonstrations. He comprehended that direct experience is the sole source of truth, and anyone can attain this experience by dedicating their body and soul to the present moment. The disciple of Rice did not find enlightenment because he sought recognition, but because he stopped seeking it. He realized that true fulfillment does not come from doing more, but rather from being fully. This lesson applies universally. Our world often elevates productivity above all else, encouraging us to gauge our value through achievements and titles. But history shows that how we do things defines us, not what we do. By giving your full attention to the moment, even the simplest tasks can become meaningful. Just as the disciple turned beating rice into a spiritual practice, we can turn any aspect of our lives into an opportunity to grow if we are willing to live with intention and presence. The Master also teaches us something important about humility, that recognizing the essence, and not the appearance, is what differentiates those who understand life from those who just go through it. He anticipated that individuals ensnared in their own delusions would contest the wisdom of the Rice disciple. But this same wisdom did not need validation. It was undeniable because it came from direct experience, from real life.
¿Qué podemos aprender de esto?
The path to inner peace and clarity doesn't require a monasterio or special ritual. It is available to everyone here and now at any moment.
No tienes que buscar algo extraordinario para encontrar significado.
In fact, the extraordinary is already hidden within the ordinary.
El secreto es simplemente estar presente, soltar el ego, y abrazar lo que está delante de nosotros con atención plena. Así como el discípulo del arroz encontró la iluminación en su tarea diaria, nosotros también podemos encontrar un propósito mayor en nuestras acciones cotidianas. No importa lo que hagamos, sino cómo nos conectamos con ello. No se trata de alcanzar algo distante, sino de despertar a lo que ya está a nuestro alcance. El poder de vivir plenamente en el aquí y el ahora. Por lo tanto, la historia deja una última pregunta para todos nosotros. ¿Realmente estamos viviendo o simplemente estamos pasando los días? La respuesta no está en teorías o grandes cambios, sino en la simple práctica de estar presente.
In the end, the greatest truth lies not in what we find outside, but in what we discover within ourselves, in the quiet essence of being.
Espero que esta historia te haya tocado de alguna manera. Si te gustó, dale un like, suscríbete al canal y compártelo con cualquiera que creas que también pueda beneficiarse de este mensaje. Y no te olvides de echar un vistazo a mi ebook, Divine Essence, Rediscovering the Inner Self and Spiritual Peace. El enlace está en la descripción.
Now, enjoy watching the following video as we continue exploring more ideas to transform your spiritual journey.